Hello and welcome to another soccer coaching tactics video by AB Soccer on the Ball Chat Sports podcast channel. Today we are going to be working on building out from the back in the 7v7 or 9v9 level. So that's anywhere between the ages of U9 up to U12 at the amateur level. So just to introduce the Ball Chat Sports channel and myself, I've been coaching for around 8 years now, so various levels, both in the UK and the US. I have done my FA level 2 and currently applying for my USB license. So I've been coaching amateur level quite a long time. And this is one of the major problems. So our topic today is one of the major problems that I think kids struggle with, which is building out from the back. I have got my screen sharing, so we'll be using this tactics board as a point of reference because I think a visual reference is always good. And this is always great to show the kids as well. You know, send this in a link to the parents group or whatever you have set up for your team. And it's always good if kids can just spend 10 minutes of their day just learning about the game rather than just playing it. Because I think one of the major problems we have, especially over here in the US, is a lack of watching the game and a lack of understanding the game. And that really does show on the field in certain scenarios. So this video is for, parent coaches that are probably just coming into the game. Maybe you've took over your son's team, your daughter's team, and you're looking to understand the game a little bit more and see if you can sort of learn some new concepts and how to coach building out from the back, because it is one of the most difficult things to teach because you are affecting the whole group. It's not just coaching technique like it is with one player, coaching how to receive the ball or coaching how to pass the ball, which can be very a lot easier than trying to coach concepts that affect the whole group. So just to start off, some of the problems I have experienced working with the amateur level. So we're going to use the FA four-corner model, which is the technical, tactical, psychological, physical, and social aspects of a player's development. So some of the areas of technical, tactical problems, so poor receiving technique, poor passing technique, not receiving on back foot, where's the next pass going when it comes to you, and understanding pressure. So those are the few things that in the technical tactical area that we need to work on. The psychological aspect of the game, which is, very little spatial awareness at this age in the amateur level, I think. No transitional or proactive sense of or reactions. And kids aren't going to understand this if you say that to them, but it's basically understanding when we're about to lose the ball or when we're about to win the ball. So transition being the moment in between in possession and out of possession. If you can get them understanding that they need to try and react to that, then your team will definitely be at an advantage for it. So and movement for the sake of movement, so non-intelligent movement. I always compare this to like basketball players. They look like they're playing in this small area. So when the opposition's marking your player, they're just sort of like dancing from 2 feet to another, trying to like shake a player off. And it's just non-intelligent, non-tactical. It has nothing to do with soccer. They're just basically moving for the sake of it. So timing of the run and timing of movement is especially important when it comes to building out from the back as well. Physical corner, so poor coordination, no movement off the ball, making space. I always try and tell my kids that in a 60-minute game or whatever duration you guys are playing, that they're probably only going to have the ball at their feet for, say, 1 minute of those 60 minutes. So 59 of those 60 minutes that they're on the field, they're going to spend off the ball. So that's creating space for your teammates. So moving into space, recovering to support defensively, pushing up to support offensively. So there's lots of different things you can do off the ball. And the quicker they understand that, then hopefully the more that they'll understand transition and supporting teammates, working as a team. And it's not all about just having the ball at your feet. And finally, the social corner. So lack of commands, lack of communication, really, really big thing with these ages. And I think that comes down to not understanding the game enough as well. You don't see many players that command on the field where I work. So that's a big thing. If you can get players that are very commanding and that can sort of give tactical instructions to their teammates, then you're on for a winner. Very few calls on man on. I was at U11 boys and girls games this weekend. There isn't really much of that. You don't really hear much on the field. No real tactical instructions. So, your centre D, if he's telling your defense to push up when that ball goes forward to try and keep our shape, then you're onto a winner there. So if you can coach that, then great. That would be something very, very handy to have in your team. Okay, so we're going to go straight onto the board. So we're going to start setting up our team into a position to receive. We're going to talk mainly about goal kicks. So starting from goal kicks. So we're going to talk about things you can ask your goalkeeper to do, things you can ask your receiving players to do, and then things you can ask the surrounding players on your team to do. So obviously the ball's going to be starting. We're going to be the yellow team. The ball's going to be starting back here. Some teams like to have a defender taking their goal kicks. I don't really like that. I'd prefer, even if your goalkeeper isn't that comfortable playing a pass, because you do get some goalkeepers that really struggle to play a short pass. I would still rather coach that up rather than have your right D or your centre D taking the goal kick, because basically you're taking a player away from that building out from the back support system. So really you want your right D really pushed into this position here. So you want them checking into a space that is kind of parallel to that 6-yard box. Obviously not too close, but not too far away. And I definitely prefer close to far away, but somewhere in the middle will be great. This is important because, one, you're either playing with a breakout line at 7-versus-7, which will be somewhere along this line here. And if you're playing 9-versus-9, then obviously players have to start outside the box. This is important because I've seen countless times a player receiving the ball out here. It could take 2 or 3 seconds, and that's if the pass is accurate for that pass to get there. By time, if you've got your 3 opposition players that push up, usually up, at this level at 9-a-side, you usually got players that either play a 3-4-1 or 3-3-2 or some variation of that 3-2-3. So usually you've got 3 players up there. You've got your central striker that's in the middle area, and then you've got 2 players pushed up in the wide areas. And then you've probably got your 2 midfielders. Let's say their back 3 is on the line. So usually there'll be something like that. Usually there is a back 3 and a forward 3 when it comes to building out from the back. So if that pass is going into your number 2, if that pass takes 3 seconds, by the time it gets there, that player's already under pressure. And let's say they're not Iniesta or Xavi, which they probably won't be. So they're not going to be able to receive that ball on the back foot, maybe take a touch around that player and play a pass in. Perhaps you have got great players that play in those positions, but I would rather that player start there. There's going to be a shorter time for them to pass the ball. And then the number 11 is going to make that run. They're going to make a straight run. So you have a lot more angle for that pass into your wide player than you would do if you're here, because what you find if they receive there, they've only got a short amount of space to play with. Even if they do receive on the back foot well and try and play the pass into the 7, you're working with a really narrow space on that field. So that really limits how you can build out from the back. So a much better position for them to take up would be those 2 positions there. Your 4 can sort of hover in there. You don't really need that player to be a particularly great player receiving, because we are really going to work with the 2 receiving players in the box, and then your 2 wide players, and also your 2 centre mids that are going to be checking in to create that sort of triangle shape. So just a few of the things that you can ask your receiving players to do. We also don't want our players receiving on a forward angle, because this is going to reduce the amount of time that they will have to control the ball and get their head up. So we should always coach our players to have an idea of where that ball will be going after they control it. We should always coach our players to have an idea of where that ball would be going after they control it before they receive the pass, almost like playing chess. So you have to think a couple of moves in advance, or else you'll get burnt. So specifically, if we're taking a goal kick here, say our keeper's taking a kick, and I'll always try and coach the player or the goalkeeper to pass to the right side. Obviously, you're going to have a lot more players that are more comfortable receiving the ball with their right foot than they are with the left foot. If you've got a right-footed player and a left-footed player that are both comfortable receiving the ball in those positions, then absolutely great. You can get your keeper, if they're good enough, to start there and make a decision about which side they play on, depending on where the opposition is. If the opposition are sort of lopsided that way, obviously you're going to pass to the right. And likewise, if they are lopsided this way, because say the last 4 times your goal kicks, they've all gone to the right player and they've sussed that out. If they've worked that out, then hopefully you can play that pass there. If your keeper's got some intelligence, he can play that pass in there, and then we can build out on that side where the free spaces. But you do not find that very often with players at this level, that they're able to read how many players are in each side, how many opposition players are on each side of the field, and where the space is. So that's something that you can definitely try and coach your goalkeeper to do, to have a quick mental count after they've retrieved the ball, see where the opposition players are, be quick and assertive as most as they possibly can, because speed of setup is incredibly important when you're building out from the back. But back to that forward pass that I was talking about. So we don't want our players here. That's a bad position for them to be in, because even if the players are starting outside the box or you start with a breakout line, once they've received here, once again, you've got half a second to react. So you're really cutting down that player's receiving and reaction time. That is the best, that is the optimal place for them to receive the ball and to be able to get their head up, receive the ball, get their head up and play a pass. So that is where we're looking for our players to receive the ball. Another thing we can ask our goalkeeper to do is, if they've caught the ball, so we're specifically talking about building out from the back from goal kicks, but if they've caught the ball in open play, we can also look to get our goalkeeper using all that box, because what you see is a lot of keepers, they're afraid of coming out of their box, and they usually try and make a roll out here. Take advantage of that when that ball's in our hands. Try and get to the edge of the box. Try and play a punt or a big kick into the wide areas to our wide players, and our wide players need to understand that. So our wide players need to push up in those situations. Then they need to understand that the ball's in their hands. They can use more of the box. We can get forward a bit quicker and a bit easier. But we'll go back to building out from the back, because that's what we're talking about today. That's mainly the point of focus today. So we spoke about our receiving players receiving, in line with that 6-yard box, making sure you're not too far away, making sure you're not too close. We don't want players at a forward angle, because we don't want to receive in here, because that's going to cut the amount of time they're going to have to react. So we'll now talk about what the surrounding players can do. So let's say our goalkeeper's played a successful short pass. Our number 2's opened up, received on the back foot. The pass was good. Pass was on the ground, had enough weight on it, and that player started to press here. You would assume that 3 is going to push up to the 7. Okay. So if that 11's clever, they probably cut off. They probably come from this angle. Our 7 should hopefully get a bit of separation from the 3. And this is where the importance of making the run in the right moment, or timing your run. Because if they make that run too early, before that pass has gone in there, the 3 is going to be on top of the 7 if they're high pressing, and it's going to be a struggle to get out there. But as that ball goes into the 2, if that 7 peels off, they might have a little buffer, a 2-second buffer, to be able to receive that ball, open up, and then perhaps play that pass into there. Or if your striker's pulled over into a wide position, hopefully playing in the gaps, they can play that pass down the wing. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for your striker not to be on this side of the field, so they can't be sleeping. So they need to react to wherever that ball is on the side of the field. But that's going to be the third pass players that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So our surrounding players, they're essentially looking to receive the next pass. So they could be your centre mids. So your centre mids here, your 6 and 8. For the purpose of this, I've just numbered them. Your 7 is your wide right midfielder. Your 11 is your wide left. Your 3 is your left back. Your 2 is your right back. Your 4 is your central defender, and your 6 and 8 as your central midfielder, with your 9 being your attacker. So you need to instruct these players to be proactive and time their runs in accordance to the play. So like we just spoke about, it's no point in them getting there early, staying there. All right. So they have to react. So the 8 has to, if they're starting there, the 8 has to peel off when that pass goes in there. Same with here. If they're starting positions here, they need to pull back into that area ready to receive. If that player doesn't press there, then obviously they're going to push up. They don't want to be here. Right. If the 11 doesn't immediately press and they've got time to dribble, then you probably want to be waiting a few more seconds, let them dribble, then check into the space. And hopefully that 8 pulls into that area there. So it's all about timing of the run. This is obviously a very difficult concept to teach at amateur soccer, because, perhaps we don't watch as much soccer as we would have liked. There's a lot of kids on the islands where I work that really don't watch enough soccer. That they don't watch the game. They don't try and understand the game. Perhaps their parents aren't, they're not massive soccer fans. So they don't, it's not on TV at home and stuff. So it's really difficult to try and teach these sort of concepts to sort of like U9, U12 amateur levels. So other players on the surrounding in the surrounding area, so the second pass players, you might want them to perhaps stay in their position. So I'll give a quick example. So a lot of times, if the opposition have got their back three and they stay quite flat on the halfway line, which a lot of opposition players do, they won't push up those players to high press. Very unlikely you'll get a 1-versus-1 situation here where the two wide players push up and support the press. So let's drop these players back for now, which means that we have an advantage here. We have a 2-on-1 advantage. So what we can do is, if there is space out here, so if you are confident playing that pass into there, what you might see is that player pushing up there, which leaves a huge gap in there to play that pass into the 7. So a pretty simple tactic that you can teach your goalkeeper, your right back, left back, and your two wide midfielders is, if that player's in there, so if that 11, their left attack is in there, play the pass into the 2. I know we've just spoke briefly about making sure that player isn't too wide, but depending on the comfortability of your players and the technique of your players, and depending on where that back three is, you can probably play that pass into there, and then that player will probably do that. All right, so they'll come around here. So they should have time to be able to pick up their head. Hopefully that player checks in there. So that's going to be important. So the 8's going to have to check in here, and then you're creating the triangle that way. If they push up, obviously you're looking to play that pass straight away into there. Hopefully your goalkeeper's got enough ability to be able to play that pass straight directly into there. If not, you've probably got a player that takes it. Obviously, once again, I'd rather not have a player there, because I think he's a complete waste of a player, because then you're doing this, you're losing a player in the middle. So you really want your goalkeeper getting confident playing that pass or playing a short pass into there. So there's just one technique you can coach. Usually if one player has got a dilemma between those two players, that's what you want to do. You want to play that. You want to teach your goalkeeper to play the pass in there. If the player's stood off, or if the player's pushed up, then you want to play the direct pass straight into the wide player. So that's something you can do, and you will find a lot. Very rarely will you have this situation where the two players are pushed up at amateur level. Maybe in the higher level teams, you might see it, but it's a very sort of high risk reward tactic for the opposition. So we don't always see it. So other surrounding players. So players looking to receive, obviously midfield players, players that will not be directly involved in the build-up, but would be covering the play and responding to our possible players. We were referred to as the third ball players. So these third ball players will be the players off the ball that are not directly involved in the build-up. So these players here should always be looking. So when that player checks in, that midfielder should check in into a space. Depending on what those players do, they should be looking to create that triangle. These wide players need to shift over. So this is very important. So your left D should almost become a central D. Your left midfielder should almost check over to the halfway line, just to make sure we stay nice and compact, because we don't want to leave these big gaps because we're doing nothing there. One, we probably haven't got the ability to play those. Well, we definitely haven't got the ability to play those long diagonal passes at this age. So we should be all shifting over, making sure that we're keeping that shape nice and compact. That's very important, just in case we lose the ball and the opposition transition. We want to be in covering positions just in case we do lose that. So that's very important as well. So that was it basically. So we've covered the sort of players on the ball. We've covered some tactics for building that from the back. What the roles and responsibilities of these central players should be. Obviously checking into spaces, making sure that the timing of the run's good. what the roles and responsibilities of these receiving players are, which would be the 2 and the 3. And then trying to think of ways that we can create dilemmas for those wide players. So, and also the wide players on your team, making sure that they're checking into an angled space so that we can try and build that ball forward, and hopefully get off the field in 2 or 3 passes. And obviously we spoke about that tactic. If the defense are all stuck on the, if the opposition defense are all stuck on the line, on the halfway line, how can we utilize that space there to try and play a direct pass, even get to the halfway line in one pass, which can happen if your keeper's smart and agile and reacts quick, then we can do that. So my advice for coaches that are trying to teach this is play your strongest players, your strongest ball players in these positions ready to receive. So your 2 and 3 positions. So I can't stress how important this is. In a competitive game, there may be as many 10 scenarios where you have to build out from the back from goal kicks. If you've got poor technical players playing in these positions, you're going to really, really struggle to get that player receiving the ball and playing a forward pass into feet. So it's going to be very, very difficult to do that if you haven't put a good technical skill players. And, we haven't all got teams that have, 12 good players, 9 on the field, 3 on the bench. Perhaps we got 3 or 4 really confident ball players, maybe even less than that. So we have to be very specific about where we put our players in position when we're building out from the back. I've even tried, if my 2, say, centre midfielders are my strongest players, I've even tried rotating them into those positions and then shifting. So shifting when we get that ball forward, when we build out, and then recovering into different positions. So, and this is good for their understanding of different positions and covering positions for their teammates. Understand that, all right, this isn't just my position. Like, I don't just play centre midfield. Sometimes I'm going to have to cover in at right back if my right back pushes up. Sometimes I'm going to have to cover in at centre D if my centre D's out of position or he's gone up from a corner. So it's understanding that sort of fluidity in the shape that can be very helpful as well. So this is, if you've got poor technical players in these positions, potentially could concede on 50% of those 10 encounters. Let's say you can see 2 or 3 goals. Probably not a game, but definitely once a game. If you put weak players in those positions and you have no understanding of building out, there's every time that you try and build out from the back, it's going to be an advantage for the opposition, and it's going to be a goal scoring opportunity for them. So some practices that can help: rondos. Get your kids doing rondos every single training session. So for those that are new to rondos, it's basically like pig in the middle. So you will have between 6 and 8 players on the outside, depending on how many players you've got. You can start off with 1 player in the middle against 6 or 1 player against 5. You can add 2 players in, have a ball. And all you're doing is basically 2 or 3 touch on the outside, depending on your skill level. Whoever loses the ball to the player in the middle goes in the middle. So you just get them to hold a penny. So if they receive the ball and the 6 goes in, that player comes out, and then you always got 2 players in the middle. So this is a great drill for just understanding pressure, understanding how important your first touch is, looking to get your head up as soon as you receive. So we spoke today about making sure that players know where that pass is going once they receive it. So like being like a chess move, that is so important for players at this level. They need to know where that pass is going before they receive it, because if they receive the ball and then they're thinking about where to pass, you already got a problem. You already got a problem, because they're going to be under pressure straight away. And any good players and any quick players, which usually get the opposition put their fastest players up front, you're going to be under pressure straight away. So this is a great drill that you can do to make sure that they're getting used to doing that, playing short passes to feet, receiving on the back foot, playing split passes. So split passes is very important. So getting into the gaps so that they can play those split passes, which you do when you're building out from the back as well. So there's a lot of concepts that we can take from this. And do specific build out scenarios, So if you've got enough players, if you've got 15 players in your team, do build out from the back scenarios, because it's only going to help. If you can try and best match the situation in the game and replicate that, 10, 15 times in training, then, you know, they're going to be better for it, and they're going to understand the concepts that you're trying to teach them more, rather than just shouting things on the sideline, which I'm prone to do at times, to my kids. Making sure that they are trying to get them to understand concepts that are far beyond their level of comprehension in 30 seconds on the field is nigh on impossible. So basically, don't do it. That's my advice on that. Yeah, and there's another one that I like to do as well. So if you're using, say using this half the field, so if you're using, say, half the field here, so this is another training practice I like to do. You can have a box here with, say, let's say how many yellows? 7. We'll do 7 versus 7. So two yellows on the field. All the players restricted to this yellow box that I've just circled. Let's have another yellow in there. All the reds are the possession team, so they start off as a possession team. Okay, so they're in the ball. They've got the ball. If they get to 3 passes, so if they get 1, 2, say they manage to build out 3, yellows are trying to receive the ball. 4, say if they get to 3 or 4 passes, then another opposition defensive player will get added on. If they get another 3 or 4 passes, then they add them on. So whoever's on here stays. The objective is to try and get all the yellows on. So you can sort of work with this. So you can do every 4 passes that you add a player on. If they do, say, 12 passes consecutively, add a player on every 3 or 4 passes. And then you can have a couple of pug goals. So a couple of small goals either side. They can be your targets for the yellow team. So if the yellow team manage to win the ball, they can transition into attack. They're not worried about passing, but they are just trying to be direct and try and score a goal. So this is a really good pressing and passing transitional game. It's got a lot of moments of the actual real game in it, and it just teaches your team to retain possession. So that is about it. So hopefully some of those concepts hit home. Hopefully there's some understanding there from you guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you try any of these practices out, or any of these concepts in your games, and see if they work. I'm sure they will. I have seen a lot of improvement with my kids since trying to embed these sort of philosophies into our play, or always starting every week, every training session with some form of rondo game, possession game. It's just so important. Foot skills, you know, doing foot skills and doing sort of individual skills, ball at your feet is great. But there needs to be a certain amount of time dedicated to trying to keep the ball. Because at the end of the day, it's one of the most important lessons they're going to learn moving forward in their young soccer careers. So thanks for watching. Let me know, please, in the comments any tips you can give me in terms of my understanding the game as well, because I'm always learning. As a coach, you should always be looking to learn. So hopefully you can teach me a few things as well. So yeah, make sure you check out my podcast as well. I do a Ball Chat Sports podcast, so you can find that on our page. I do that with James Allen weekly. My good friend James Allen. We talk about all sorts of sports: boxing, American football, baseball, anything really, all from the world of sport. So check that out. That's pretty fun. And then I'm going to be doing more of these videos. So I'm going to be doing more of these 11-a-side videos, 9-a-side, 7-a-side, different sort of tactics, different sort of moments of the game in possession phases, transition phases, out of possession phases. So be sure to check this out in the future. And once again, thanks for watching.